by Steve Austin.
Chapter 20. The Unsolvable Equation. It is Monday, the 25th day of Dharma. It is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Oddicum and Manish were still in the controvisory after the meeting with Nerub had concluded, discussing the judgments the Manista High Court had rendered. Oddicum seemed mildly ashamed of his reaction to Nerub's statements concerning Shania.
Allow me to apologize, Manish, for losing my temper when Nerub announced the death sentence on Shania. I mildly regret the vulgarity I used in expressing my shock and revulsion at the court's verdict, but I meant every word I said, even though my vernacular may have been more than a bit salty.
My Lord Oddicum, the control you displayed in refraining from crossing the table and strangling that pompous bastard was remarkable, and I found your wording to be more than appropriate considering the situation. Perhaps it was offensive, but there are certain situations wherein offensiveness is a necessity, and this was certainly one of them.
Thank you, Manish.
Not at all. I too was angered upon hearing Nerub utter those horrible words. Even after the short time I have known her, I can already see why Shania is likely the most beloved creature walking Aerosian soil, and for an entire race of people to garner disdain toward her without having even met her is indeed a testimony to that race's lack of intellect. And in this case, an intellect which that particular race has claimed superior to all others.
Yes, the pride of the Manista is certainly overblown, to say the least. They strut about condemning those who practice magic as ignorant. They either don't realize or won't accept the fact that Splendetta, the ritual they hold in such high regard, is itself a form of magic. If they could but accept that fact, they might see the place magic rightfully occupies in Erosian society and learn to embrace other species instead of shunning them.
And that, Lord Oddicum, is precisely why they hate Shania the way they do. She is the walking embodiment of the marriage of sprite and elven magic to Manista logic and intellect. She is living, breathing proof that their belief that magic and intelligence are not compatible is vastly erroneous.
Yes, of course. I didn't see that until you pointed it out. Thanks again, Manish. They hate Shania because they fear Shania, and they fear Shania because she renders their belief system obsolete. Now it makes sense. But what, if anything, to do about it?
Is there anything that actually needs be done? I feel the edict the Justice Supreme laid upon Shania is for the most part a bluff constructed to keep Shania and the free peoples out of the Manista's business. The Manista likely wouldn't come outside the breaking wall to seek Shania out. The cowardice you alluded to earlier prevents that. And remember how easily Daneen subdued Nerub at the first meeting here? Daneen's mage is truly formidable, perhaps one of the greatest in Aeros. But Shania's mage is exponentially greater than any other in this land. Not to mention, she has the 13 guarding her constantly. Do you think at this point there is any entity in Aeros which could subdue her?
Oddicum laughed a bit and answered,
You make a great point, my friend. A great point indeed.
Tuesday, the 26th day of the month of Dharma. It is 10 o'clock in the evening. Jerrone and Dinesh sat at a table in the dining hall of the Round Robin Inn in Black Mountain, waiting for Varro, a Bartane mercenary and intel thief Jerrone had consulted with numerous times before to arrive. Jerrone had sent word the moment they had arrived in Black Mountain through the network, of whom the bartender at the Robin, Heron, was chief, of their need to meet with Varro. The other members of the small party which set out from Beniscus yesterday were upstairs enjoying the soft, sweet amenities the Robin had to offer. Dinesh was voicing concerns he had about the integrity of mercenaries.
Now this Varro, can he be trusted? I have never dealt with mercenaries before. And being an intel thief myself, it seems odd to me that a practitioner of that profession can be bought, or can reverse his loyalties on the flip of a coin. How can we be assured he won't betray us if someone offers him a bigger bag of gold than the one we provide to him?
We can't. No one aside from our party in Black Mountain is to be fully trusted. Most of those who dwell here are Bartanes that Zephaeus and those who rule have deemed traitors. So, even though we have to be wary of Varro, the one thing we can count on is that he will not betray us to Zephaeus. I think in our case, once Varro is bought, he will stay bought. He certainly has no love for Zephaeus, and he isn't very fond of witches either, having had several run-ins with Minerva's people over the course of the last decade. So, the only two entities that might attempt to buy him off are the two entities he refuses to align himself with. I think we are safe. Just keep your guard up and choose your words carefully when speaking to him. Remember, he sells the intel he gathers, so treat every sentence you utter as if it will be sold for a price. Even though he most likely won't sell directly to our enemies, he could possibly sell to those who would.
Acknowledged. We must instruct the other members of our party of these concerns as well.
That would be wise. We shall do so immediately after we meet with Varro.
In spite of the nervousness they were experiencing, the two sat enjoying the delightful and potent ale the Robin had on tap. Even though both of them, due to the nature of what they each did for a living, had been in many sticky situations before, there just seemed to be an ill feel in the air tonight, like something dreadful was occurring, or had already occurred. They were beginning to wonder if Varro had not stood them up, when a tall, slender, hooded figure approached their table, and without asking anyone's leave, seated himself. Dinesh assumed this was Varro, and his assumption was correct.
Good evening, Jerrone and friend. How do you fare on this fine night in Darmay?
Varro asked.
A bit tired, but aside from that, quite well. And you good, sir?
Never better. I always feel quite jovial after giving that assemblage of thugs Zephaeus calls the Penegrian Gourd the business. But that tale is for another night. Do you have the fee Heron said you had agreed to pay for my services?
Jerrone waved at the serving wench and ordered a pint of ale for Varro. Then, as he sat a brown leather bag on the table, he replied,
Yes, of course. Count it if you like.
Never have you cheated me in the many years we have associated. I trust the correct sum resides in that leather purse. So, what can I do for you, gentlemen?
Jerrone answered him.
Well, in preparation for the ensuing war with Minerva and her minions, we would like—
But Varro interrupted him.
Oh, you haven't heard then. Minerva sent ogres and Bartanes to attack Harliss and the Noid cities of the north, as well as Pandana, Port Parsis, and Morganton last night. Morganton and Port Parsis are now under the control of the Disselry. Pandana was successfully defended by a troop of sprites garnered from both Tanella and Janne, and the Gnomish City Guard, plus some very powerful sprite mage I am not overtly familiar with, but I suspect it is the very one that Minerva held captive just a few days past. The Noid cities of the north stood as well, but the wayward maid was burned to the ground.
Hail the inherent. This is distressing news indeed. Do you know if Parthas and his maidens escaped?
No idea about Parthas and the maidens, but his wife Denari and the condled witch Mathila left by raft 2 days prior.
Jerrone shook his head in disbelief and said,
Well, knowing Mathila and Parthas's wife escaped is a comfort at least. Have you any word of where they landed?
No, sir. I know they escaped an ogre ambush while rafting past Pish, but I have no intel beyond that concerning them.
The wench arrived with Varro's pint as Jerrone continued his inquiry.
Ambushed, eh? This makes me wonder if it means Minerva anticipated this move and set this ambush up.
That is exactly what it means, good sir. Minerva had been plotting to wrestle Mathila away from Parthas for a while now. I imagine she was quite distressed when both her attempts failed.
Both attempts?
Yes, both attempts. The day she and Denari left Harliss, Minerva sent a squad of witches to exercise mortebrae upon her, but found she had already fled. She had the ambush set up as a backup plan, but it too failed. I know you had questioned Mathila before. Did she divulge anything? I have an idea she knows much, hence the attempts on her life.
Yes, I get the feeling she knows more than she is allowing as well. But I could not get her to crack. I was hoping for another chance, but now we can't be sure that will ever happen. What do you know of Minerva's actual plot? I have suspected from the beginning that the war was but a ruse to distract attention from what she is actually trying to achieve.
My suspicions and hunches are likely no more accurate than anyone else's outside the Disselry and Zephaeus' headquarters. But I will tell you what facts the network and I have gathered. Minerva employed a number of exiled Bartanes some months back to work as intel thieves, and has had them shadowing this mage who recently escaped her since the day of their hire. Her abduction in South Penichery was the culmination of those efforts. That, plus all the other disappearances that are seemingly unrelated, still do not offer a solvable equation at this point.
Disappearances? What disappearances?
I have been watching that fucking witch for nigh on 2 decades now, much longer than you have, my friend. Over the course of that time, many sentients have vanished. Curvanum, the chamberlain of the 3 gnome cities, being the first, and then sprites, noids, and giants have been abducted. But Minerva is clever. She spread these kidnappings out over the course of 20 years, making them seem like random disappearances, with no one ever suspecting they were related. She even managed to catch a minister or two who had ventured outside the breaking wall. And I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but I have heard she even has a few trolls held captive. Not to mention all those damned ogres she has indoctrinated. Did she abduct all those sentients simply to ascertain any secrets they might hold? Or any weaknesses their cities might have in preparation for her war? Maybe. But owing to the fact that she attempted mortebre upon one who knows too much, I think, as I know you do also, there is something else brewing in that beautiful yet evil head of hers.
Trolls. I was always taught that trolls were but a wives' tale to frighten children and make for interesting, scary campfire stories. They actually exist?
Apparently you have never ventured beyond the border of Aeros into the country of Tanis, my friend. Just on the western side of the forest of Ganaeri, which straddles the border of Aeros and Tanis, is a city called Regus. It is around 20 miles from there to a small town with an inn called Haven. If one does not wish to be eaten, he must set out from Regus for Haven at dawn and be there before dusk. The next morning one can safely continue on to Rix, which is another 20 miles to the west. But many of those who are caught on the Great River Road at night fall victim to the trolls of the southern mountain range and are never seen or heard from again. So yes, they do indeed exist, my good Manista.
This is much to digest. Learning of the existence of trolls aside, we came here to find out where the Bartane's loyalties lie. That question has obviously been answered. But where one question was answered, 2 more have arisen. All of this has to be related, as you have already ascertained. But how?
Answer that question, good Manista, and you will have outthought the most powerful minds in Aeros. But unless you can find Mathila and get her to talk, I think you are simply ramming your head into the wall. The unsolvable equation. The more intel we acquire, the more veiled the answer becomes, and I sincerely dread the day Minerva presents us her solution to that equation.
As do I, friend Varro. As do I.
It is Wednesday, the 27th day of the month of Darmay. It is 8 o'clock in the morning. Minerva sat back in the large ox-leather chair in her study at the distillery. Magda sat across from her as they sipped on white brows and conversed.
You know, my dear Magda, even though I am well aware this war is but a diversion to mask our real plot, I must admit I am enjoying it thus far. Upon finding out we took Port Parsis and Morganton, I actually became aroused and had to go and tend myself. I know conquest is likely Zephaeus' only motivation for throwing his lot in with us, but now I understand why. Conquest is sweet. Knowing I have the power to shut down trade to and from the other side of the sea is a euphoria on par with that which the orgasmanial can conjure. Setting fire to the red-headed prick, Parthas's livelihood was so delightfully malicious, I near fainted from the mass influx of joy upon hearing it was destroyed and its owner darted. Knowing that there are many in Aeros who no longer draw breath because of orders I gave makes my witch's heart palpitate in a joyous, triumphant rhythm. So deliciously evil, but I mustn't allow this to go to my head. I must maintain focus on our true purpose. As much as I would like to unleash Gunasha upon the Free Peoples just to see how many would die at her hand, I realize the premature release of that particular batch of turpitude could possibly cause damage to our long-term objective. I need you to help me with this, Magda. I need you to be by my side constantly to remind me not to become overwhelmed with the joy of conquest. I need you to soothe me when I become anxious after a victory. I need you to help diminish the exultation and take the edge off the elation that tending the diversionary portion of our plan causes my mind and my body. Do you get what I am driving at, my dear witch? My sweet, gorgeous little witch.
Indeed I do, my sweet Palatar, and I would be more than honored to tend to you in that manner. Truth be known, I have longed to do so for a very long time now.
Then come here, my darling. Come and show your Palatar just how deeply you love her.
Our gnome is secured and we are ready to push, milady,
Parnell said, squinting as the bright morning sun set the eastern skyline ablaze. After discussion, Darkinum and Shania decided to postpone their departure of Pandana until this morning. Shania citing the need for rest as the reason. Darkinum needed no reason to postpone flying.
Nea, I will try my damnedest to refrain from screaming at you when we push, so allow me to tell you now. I think you are lower than a puddle of discarded puss wash in an ogre village.
A bit harsh, don't you think, Dar? Besides, ogres don't bathe, so there really is no such thing as a puddle of that particular liquid in any ogre village. Take it easy, little darling. It's only a half-hour flight, and it's daylight this time.
Yeah, great. So I can better see what I'm about to crash into. Thanks for reminding me, bitch.
And I love you too, you little Nomo puss.
And she giggled, took off running, and lifted off into the bright morning sky. Darkinum closed his eyes, gritted his teeth as he tightly gripped the netting of the beer in effort to keep from shouting profanities at the foretold as they lifted off. He couldn't really say this flight was any less frightening than the last, but at least it was now a familiar fright. He felt that sinking feeling in his stomach and knew they were ascending rapidly. When his stomach finally caught up to the rest of his body, he figured they had leveled off, and he slowly opened his eyes. He quickly realized this was a mistake and shut them tightly again.
In the name of blue thundering fuck, I'm never going to get used to this, but I suppose I'd better try.
He thought to himself as he opened his eyes and began to look around. He didn't see Shania at first, but he could hear the drone of wings just above him, and was able to turn his head just enough to confirm that it was indeed the foretold. Shania noticed Darkinum looking around and shouted down to him.
Dar, are you all right, darling?
Hell no, I am not all right, and you suck ogre tits, you gangly-assed foretold bitch!
Shania giggled a bit as she knew this was his way of telling her he was uncomfortable, but not deeply distressed.
Okay, sweetheart. Hang on, I am right here if you need me.
And so, with a slightly less frightened gnome in tow, Shania and the 13 winged their way toward Beniscus. Carnada, Rantine, Tonea, and Kirena sat in chairs next to Parthas's bed in the Ministry of Rejuvenation. They were discussing how and when to deal with the incognito situation and any ramifications that might ensue. Rafus, Nimbash, and Condon had already been informed as to the two ladies from Harliss's actual motivation for the false identities. Save, of course, the information about Minerva Kirena was guarding, and they agreed to keep mum until told otherwise. Rantine and Tanea had also been brought up to date on the current situation, again excluding the vital pieces of information which were the reason for all this cloak and dagger. Kirena had the floor.
Word is Shania will return from Pandana this morning, but I assume she will likely be tied up for some time with Lord Oticum and the rest of the contingency inhabiting the Controvisory. At best, we could possibly see her this afternoon or tonight, but I imagine it will be tomorrow before we could actually have an official audience with her. Should we decide to confess, and I think that is exactly what we should do, I think Shania would be the one we need to entrust with our information.
But Denari didn't agree 100% with her lover's plan.
I don't know, sweetheart. Yes, this is intelligence, the powers that be need to have, and I do feel Shania will understand our necessity for deception. But Shania doesn't rule Beniscus. Lord Oticum does. And in spite of how well he has treated us so far, I stand by the advice I gave you upon our arrival. No ruler likes being deceived. Most will not tolerate it. Suppose he imprisons us, or even worse, expels us from Beniscus.
And Tanea interjected.
I don't really understand any of this, but I do understand the cruelty Minerva's witches can administer. Their brand of evil can horrify to the very core of a sentient, which is why I am here. I cannot stand the thought of anyone I love being subjected to that. They seem to enjoy putting a being in that horrifyingly intense state of fear. If Kirena is expelled from this palace and the witches get her, and Kaneda as well. No, it is unthinkable. We just can't.
Kirena got up and kissed the sweet little gnome on the cheek and said,
Ton, my sweet little darling, I am so sorry this happened to you. I hated the Order before, but after hearing of what they did to you... Shit. 1,000 deaths are not enough for Minerva. Look, I appreciate all the sincere concern all of you feel for me. Knowing there are those who love me is a much-cherished blessing that warms my very spirit. And blessings inherent, I certainly need to feel that heat right now. But that doesn't change the fact that at some point Jerrone will return. I understand he is in Black Mountain spying on the elves there. That's a 36-hour march, meaning he could be here day after tomorrow, sooner if he has already left. When he does return, our cover is blown. Do you not feel Oddicum would take it better if we confessed than he would if it came from a third party?
I agree with Kirena. Confessing is the option that seems most likely to end well.
But Carneda added a final stipulation.
Okay, we confess. But we strike a bargain first. Jerrone has no doubt voiced to Oddicum his opinion that Kirena has vital information. So, we barter to swap that information for, firstly, immunity for any crime they feel we may have committed by deceiving them. And secondly, we are granted sanctuary here in Boniscus for the duration of the Witch War and any unrest thereafter caused by the plot Minerva is secretly hatching. I have thought a lot about the possible repercussions. If Minerva achieves any success in what she is trying to unleash on Aeros, and trust me, it could alter life as we know it in a most catastrophic manner.
That is indeed a sound strategy, my dear wife. Kirena was right. You are quite a formidable leader when the chips are down. Then we are in one accord?
I believe we are. I will approach Shania about meeting with us at the first opportunity. Blessings inherent abound for you all. I love you folks. You've been my family since I first defected the Order, and that is a huge comfort to me.
Jerrone and Dinesh, along with Danis, Parkamane, and Torvis, the intel thieves who had accompanied them to Black Mountain, and Panimid and Trelim, the half-breeds Oddicum had sent with them, were seated at a table in the dining hall of the Round Robin Inn and Splurt House having breakfast. Jerrone was speaking.
Trelim, Panimid, I think the two of you should take wing and relay the intel we received from Varro last night to Oddicum and Manish. We still don't know exactly what Minerva is plotting, but we do know now that there is indeed more to it than just an ogre war, and that taking all the kidnappings Varro talked about into account, especially considering they have been occurring over the course of 2 decades, it is apparent that Minerva has been working on this scheme for much longer than we could have ever surmised. That would indicate to me that her plot is a very complicated and involved affair, which would likely have a huge negative impact on Aeros if we allow her to succeed.
And Dinesh added,
It may also be wise to advise Oddicum to assemble search parties to seek Mathila. If she does indeed have the information Jerrone and Varro suspect she does, it would eliminate all the guesswork and allow us to address the specific problem quickly and efficiently, and perhaps with the aid of the foretold formulate a solution. A shot in the dark, I know, but worth the effort should we succeed in finding her.
I agree. I feel Mathila wants to talk, and if her safety is guaranteed, she would probably be more than willing to aid us. I just hope she and Denari did not raft all the way to Port Parsis and leave Aeros altogether. So, let's finish our meal and—
But Jerrone was interrupted as a gorgeous elven working lady approached the table and asked,
Lord Jerrone, could I trouble you to join your party this morning? I have a request I should like to make of you.
Certainly, my dear. Please have a seat. Have you had breakfast yet this morning?
Yes, I dined in my room before coming down, but thank you all the same.
You are more than welcome. And what is it I can do for you today, my lovely elven maiden?
I should like for you to allow me to join your party and journey with you to Boniscus. I am elvish, therefore I have no aversion to long marches and will not slow you. I have my own provisions and gear, so I will not be a burden to you in that manner. I am originally from Fornade, so I am familiar with the area of destination. And I am trustworthy, to the point I am actually considered a detriment to the local dynamic of the deceitful and disloyal residents of this inherent forsaken township. Just ask Varro or Heron, the bartender. Either will vouch for their distaste toward my honest nature.
Jerrone, for some inexplicable reason, wanted to trust this working lady he had never laid eyes on until today. He had a feeling in his gut that there was some sort of kinship betwixt he and she. But this is Black Mountain, and rule number 1 was to trust no one. So he continued to question her.
And why is it you wish to flee Black Mountain, and to specifically flee to Boniscus? Or do you intend to continue on to Fornade once we escort you safely to Boniscus?
And her answer took Jerrone aback.
I wish to go to Boniscus because the son I have never met resides there. The son I have never met is in fact the lord of the city. I am Brina. the Lord Oddicom's biological mother.